Do you want to be ahead of the game for the latest in arts, music, cuisine, and entertainment across the Middle East's most dynamic capital cities? Al Monitor is proud to launch our City Pulse newsletters, focused exclusively on local news, starting in Riyadh, Dubai, Istanbul, and Doha. Each week, our on-the-ground writers in these cities cover the latest cultural happenings and trends, so you have everything you need to know for the best local experiences. To subscribe for free, go to almonitor.com, that's al-monitor.com, and sign up on our newsletter page.
Welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief. I'm Adam Lucente. After 15 months of war, U.S. President Joe Biden announced on Wednesday that a ceasefire deal between Israel and Hamas has been reached. The deal, mediated by the U.S., Qatar, and Egypt, aims to result in the release of hostages in Gaza in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, an Israeli withdrawal from the enclave, and an increase in humanitarian assistance. The Israeli government still has to formally approve the deal, and the cabinet is expected to meet on Friday. But what are the actual details of the deal, and why did it materialize now after previous efforts failed? My guest this week is Al Monitor's State Department correspondent, Elizabeth Hagedorn. Elizabeth has reported extensively on the efforts to reach a ceasefire, and takes us through both how the deal came to be and what comes next. Hope you enjoy. Elizabeth, welcome back to the Al Monitor Brief.
Hi, Adam. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for joining. My first question is about how this all came to be. Negotiations on the deal dragged on for months. How did the ceasefire agreement come about, and why did it happen now?
The ceasefire and hostage deal is in many ways 15 months in the making, but negotiations accelerated earlier this month. President Biden and his aides were determined to get a deal before leaving office, and President-elect Trump was equally as determined for this not to be on his plate come Inauguration Day. So you had an unusual pairing. Biden's Middle East point person, Brett McGurk, who was leading the negotiations along with CIA Director Bill Barr, he was joined in Doha this week by Trump's future envoy to the region, Steve Witkoff. And together, they got the deal across the finish line. The biggest hurdle was coming up with the exact formula of which hostages were to be released in exchange for which Palestinian prisoners held in Israel. Until pretty recently, Hamas refused to hand over a complete list of the hostages and their whereabouts. The breakthrough came this week in a two-story building in Doha, where you had Egyptian and Qatari mediators shuttling messages between the Hamas officials who were on one floor and the Israeli officials on the other. They worked late into the night on Tuesday, according to a senior administration official, ironing out every last detail. Even then, it wasn't until the afternoon, just hours before Biden's announcement yesterday, that negotiators were sure they had a done deal.
President Biden and Prime Minister Netanyahu's office both mentioned on Wednesday that details are not yet finalized. What details still need to be worked out for this ceasefire and hostage deal to be actually implemented?
As of this recording, Israel's government has yet to ratify the deal. That still needs to happen, number one. If all goes to plan, the first of the three phases of the deal is supposed to take effect on Sunday. Over 6 weeks, Hamas will begin to free the hostages in return for the release of hundreds of Palestinian prisoners. We'll see 2 Americans, Keith Siegel and Sagi Dekelhen, included in that first group of hostages to be released. Now, during those 6 weeks that the temporary ceasefire is in effect, the expectation is that negotiators will hammer out exactly how to transition to phase 2, which is meant to be a permanent end to the war where Israeli troops will fully withdraw from Gaza. But if those negotiations take longer than anticipated, the temporary ceasefire across Gaza will remain in place until they're ready to implement phase 2.
Don't go anywhere. We'll be back with Elizabeth after this short break.
Today's transformation of the Middle East is at the center of global geopolitics. Whether you're an analyst, diplomat, executive, or academic, you need the best reporting and analysis to understand what's really happening on the ground and what it means for the world. Al Monitor is the award-winning independent leader in Middle East news. From Riyadh to Beirut, Abu Dhabi to Doha, and Baghdad to Tehran, our team of over 100 expert journalists report daily on the top stories driving the regional trends. Download our mobile app and subscribe to Al Monitor to follow what leaders and decision makers are reading every day. Go to almonitor.com, That's al-monitor.com and use promo code POD25, POD25 for a discount.
Okay, we're back. Elizabeth, what does this deal mean for Hamas? Is it expected they will remain in power now? What is the significance of the agreement for them?
That is the million-dollar question, Adam, because while the ceasefire and hostage agreement does outline an end to the war, it does not determine Gaza's future governance. It says only that post-war planning is to be discussed during phase two of the ceasefire. Now, the Biden administration and its partners do have a plan. Secretary of State Blinken outlined elements of it earlier this week. It would involve a reformed Palestinian Authority, ultimately running Gaza as part of a single unified government with the West Bank. There would be an interim security mission that would include Arab partner forces and vetted Palestinians who would ensure border security until a trained Palestinian-led authority force is able to come in and take the reins. That all sounds great, but at the end of the day, we know that Hamas wants to rearm, recruit, and rebuild, not to mention the fact that Israel's leaders are not exactly yet on board with the PA returning to Gaza. So there are obviously a lot of big question marks surrounding the day after, planning for which will ultimately fall to this next Trump administration.
Okay, Elizabeth, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to more of your really solid reporting on this issue.
Thanks so much, Adam.
Thanks for listening to the Al Monitor Brief. Follow Al Monitor for more on the stories impacting the Middle East.